Hey there everybody. As far as I know, I should have sufficient internet to actually live stream, so I'm giving it a go. Lots to talk about. This is an unscheduled, off my usual day live stream, and normally this would be a day late and an hour late, but somebody might show up. Either way, it's a good way of just talking to people outside of my normal format, because I've got a few things I wanted to talk about and also a cup of coffee that I wanted to drink. So I have moved into the new digs. This is now my office room. My Red Dragon is relocated with me, and I'm back up and running and making videos and doing all that good stuff. Talking on Discord quite a lot. So I wanted to talk about Magic the Gathering merger with Dungeons and Dragons and the response that I had from the video that I did on Nico Bolas. And I wanted to talk about the new series that I have planned for the channel. I wanted to talk about Patreon rewards and how I'm going to set up a new system for doing that, and some really quite good rewards which I figured a way of working my way around the sort of copyright rules of Wizards of the Coast, so that I can actually bring rewards to the patrons, which is not the same as like how I normally do it at the moment. Is they get advanced access to videos and things. Hey Fargo. So they get advanced access to videos. In fact, there's one on there at the moment that they've got access to early, which is another one of the Demon series videos. And this is quite a different one because it's a demon from the Tome of Beasts. So going forward in future, I wanted to include... Hey Tracy. Hey Kidron. So going forward in future on the Patreons, I wanted to include exclusive video access to me planning campaigns and encounters and stuff. So I get around the fact that Wizards of the Coast has copyright restrictions on its material, and particularly its artwork and things like that, and that you can talk about anything and use any of their material as long as it's free access to everybody. It's not behind a paywall. So in that regard, I can't be using artists' artwork and things like that in those sort of videos, because that would be a copyright infringement, essentially, as far as I can tell from the Open Gaming License. So you get around that by giving content which is just me basically streaming on camera and stuff, and I'm doing illustrations and sculpting and talking and arranging terrain and talking about monster encounters and how you run encounters and things like that for your games, essentially using all the accumulated knowledge that I've built up over the several years of making these videos. So I thought that might be a slight enticement to people, because it's a very low cost to be a patron. Essentially it's just $1 a month, so you could donate like $1 for one video and then set your maximum donation to $1, and if enough people do that, then essentially that makes me independent of YouTube. I don't have to rely on it for income, and that would really motivate me to help everybody out and put out that sort of content. Of course, it doesn't really take away from the other content that I do, because I have a lot of time to think about things and put the work in. So on the YouTube channel, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be producing a new series that I've been building up to for years now, really. But I've always been sort of, have I got the skills to do this? Now I think I have the research skills, and I've got the format and things, and I've got the technical know-how to actually do it. Yeah, lightning bolt. So what I'm going to be doing is a YouTube series called The History of the Realms, History of Faerun, essentially. So I'm going to be going over the entire history of the planet of Toril, in particular the entire history of the continent of Faerun. And I'm going to structure the videos so that each video, good morning, each video will be a certain time period from so-and-so to so-and-so, and all of the events that happened in that, so that by watching that series, somebody who is just getting into Forgotten Realms and all just getting into D&D and doesn't have a world setting or anything like that, they can watch those. Not only will it be a fascinating walk through time, like you know, the grand history of the Forgotten Realms, but also it will familiarize you with all of the different places and locations, all the different countries, all their borders, what they're about, what sort of interaction there has been from yeah, finally, what sort of interactions there's been throughout history of all those different nations, how they formed and things like that. So I think it will be a pretty good overview of the Forgotten Realms. The resources that I'll be drawing from on that, there's copious amounts of information on the internet, going day by day, almost year by year, of events that happened throughout the entire calendar. And also the Grand History of the Realms, which was released, I think, in 3rd edition or 3.5. So there's plenty of resources for me to draw on. Not a lot of artwork and things like that which I can draw on, so there's going to be some long sections of me just talking with probably maps and things like that on display. So I'll be talking about a particular location, but not the usual standard of like flashy images from fantasy artists and things. I also wanted to talk about in my video on the Deck of Many Things how people were commenting on my accent not being great for saying the Deck of Many Things. Yeah, so I apologize for that, for if anybody was offended by the way that I talk, but I can't really do anything about it. And I'm not going to attempt to put on an American accent just to make people more comfortable. You know, expand your horizons is what I say. Also, I'm looking at next year in particular expanding the hobby itself. So using whatever small amount of clout that I have on the internet, whatever reach I have, to extend it a hell of a lot further. And I'm looking at possibly, since I write all these videos as scripts, I thought what I'd do is I would pay somebody to translate it into Hindi, and then I'd set up a second channel, which is a Hindi D&D channel, essentially exactly the same content that I produce for you guys, except it would be translated into Hindi and released, aimed at providing Dungeons and Dragons to the continent of India. So we'll see how that goes, and if it goes particularly well, then I might expand into translating the videos into Mandarin as well. So I'll be paying some voice actors from India, essentially a wage to do this as a job, a regular sort of form of income, and hopefully expanding the hobby into a brand new market. Well, I know there's Hindi speakers who play Dungeons and Dragons, so hopefully this will be possibly good news to them, and maybe they can spread the word and help me out. But I think, you know, YouTubers should use their influence to expand the hobby, because it's good for everybody. It's good for the market. So in that regard, back to the Magic the Gathering merger with Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, Americans and Waterdeep. If negative energy plane of the great everything is nothing, it must be the same as atom, which means the negative energy plane should be a giant nuclear explosion. Well, yeah, technically speaking, I suppose. Well, yeah, that'll be next T-Series. If T-Series picks me up, oh boy, that'll be it. I'll be home and hosed. Do people say home and hosed in America? I don't know. So in regards to the Magic the Gathering merger and the mainly the comments from a couple of posters, very knowledgeable posters, or commenters I should say, who responded to the information of Nicobolas being merged into the universe of Dungeons and Dragons, in particular where I was talking about the meditation plane essentially being the astral realm, or the infinite, the, what do they call it? The infinite wildness, the planes of forever, essentially being the abyss. Now that was an interpretation of what I was reading from the Wikipedia articles and things like that on Nicobolas and that information. Bear in mind, I'm just getting started in my exploration of the Magic the Gathering universe, so the things that I say at the beginning will not be canonically accurate. Also, the guide to Ravnica hasn't even been released yet, so I don't know what shape the merger between Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons is going to take, or whether they're going to treat it like a wholly separate thing. I don't think they are, because they're approaching Dungeons and Dragons from a Planescape perspective. Planescape is what 5th edition is, essentially. So I see absolutely nothing wrong with merging the two universes together within Dungeons and Dragons. It's not going to affect Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering will always remain a separate universe as far as I can tell. They're not going to change the card line, because that's not really what they're about. They're interested in getting more people playing Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering in and of themselves, not necessarily merging the two together as one franchise. That would be financial suicide, and that's not what they're about. So they're essentially just drawing on the lore of Magic the Gathering, which is underutilized in a card game, honestly, unless you're writing novels and things, and introducing it into Dungeons and Dragons, where it will sell a lot of books. So really, this is for Dungeons and Dragons players. It's not necessarily for Magic the Gathering players. It is certainly aimed at people who do both, which I do. I play Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, I'm really, really interested in it and very, very enthusiastic about it, and a lot of people are. So I'm not very interested in people saying that they shouldn't be merged together, because they are being merged together from my perspective, from the perspective of Dungeons and Dragons, and going into videos and things like that where people are talking about that and basically attempting to correct any sort of mistakes or errors, or basically pour cold water over the idea, is pointless, because I'm not interested in it, and neither is the company that's producing the products that we are buying. So it's not affecting Magic the Gathering. This merger is not affecting Magic the Gathering. Your hobby is safe, so to speak. So yeah, it's really only of interest to people who play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm very grateful for the people who play Magic the Gathering who have obviously flooded to that video to see what it's about, and see what the merger may possibly look like. And as far as I can tell, the meditation plane has got portals to other realms floating around, so that's very much like the astral realm. Yeah, the astral realm does include worlds and things like that are floating in there, so the meditation world may possibly be in the astral realm. There's no reason why it couldn't be. Magic the Gathering as a series of pocket dimensions in the astral, quite possibly. I mean, you've got the main world of Magic the Gathering is Dominaria. For most of the beginning of the product line of Magic the Gathering, Dominaria was the world where everything happened. It was just different areas of Dominaria, and it's only more recently, with the various other expansions of the decks that have been released, the card sets that have been released, that we start to expand into other areas and other planes of existence. I am very interested in Phyrexia, because Phyrexia, as far as I can tell, merges perfectly. It just dovetails perfectly into the Mind Flayers of Thune, and what Thune is in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, because it was never really explained. But what it looks like is a biomechanical merging of living and dead tissue, which is exactly what Phyrexia is all about. So that would be the perfect place to dovetail in Phyrexia into Dungeons and Dragons, through an incursion of this internal war between different factions of Mind Flayers and the various other planar factions that are involved in the fight with the Mind Flayers, because that's one hell of a storyline. And so I'm very interested in exploring that from both angles. So you can certainly expect to see that coming up from me. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to talk about. I'm glad the stream seems to be working fine. The move went great, Moondog. Hey, nice to see you, everybody. Sorry that this is an unscheduled live stream. I can see there's only 33 of you in here at the moment. I was really just testing out to see whether the live stream was working okay and the feed health was okay, but it seems to be going pretty well. So the move went very smoothly, and I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that my father is a fantastic man. He showed up to move my stuff, saw that it was like, wow, there's a bit more stuff than he had thought. So we had to do 2 loads of stuff from that city over to here. Yeah, so Phyrexia it's a combination of kind of like imagine if you had a Warforged Necromancer that was interested in using crafted items to merge with living beings and alter them to become slaves, vassals. And then imagine that those biomechanical Borg-like things took over. That would pretty much be Phyrexia as well. But the whole backstory of why Phyrexia came to be and what a blight it is in the Magic the Gathering universe really has to do with the colors, the different color streams of Magic. So it's an interesting thing, because you're really translating things between one universe and another. Oh, really? You're catching up on the move stream when I popped in. Well, that's good. Yeah, well, technically I'm still in low bandwidth. This is the same bandwidth I had before, except I've changed over to my modem, which is a little bit better. I've changed over to another provider, which is a little bit better. And they should be updating me from the ADSL, which I'm on at the moment, to VDSL, but it's still going through copper wires, so it can only get so good. About the best, your mic is actually clear. Oh, or is it? Well, I suppose it's a little bit closer to me because I'm in a slightly different angle. Yeah, it is. It is. Phyrexia is terrifying and disturbing. It should be terrifying and disturbing. The dog scarf came in 4 days. Oh, that's awesome. How's it shape up? Is it a good product, do you think, Flying X-Blade? Be honest. I haven't actually seen it myself. He's talking about the dog bandana with the Mighty Glue Stick logo. Did you go for the Mighty Glue Stick logo, or did you use the artwork? I'm interested. I'm very curious. Well, the amount of people watching doesn't really influence it that much because you're just coming in as text. But yeah, I'm happy with 36 on an unscheduled stream. That's pretty good as far as I'm concerned. Hey, Christian. So just a reminder, as always, with all of my live streams, this is a monetized channel and super chats get my attention, although there's only 36 of you here at the moment. Maybe one day I'll be famous enough and the comments will fly by so fast I won't be able to keep up with it all. You hate Warforged in 5th edition. I feel like they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. It's a living construct, which is an oxymoron, but it's also humanoid, so a cleric can heal them. I don't like it. Yeah, that was how I felt originally as well. But the thing is that the Warforged actually include wood, mostly wood and sap and stuff. So they're kind of like an undead tree in a way, or an artificially living tree. Because the locomotion, the motive force of their body is actually provided by living tissue, and that is in the form of wood fibers. So, and they've got an alchemical power supply, which is essentially a mixture of different materials that, if they get stuck, they bleed, you know, and that stuff bleeds out, they die. So they are kind of a living thing. They're just constructed, you know. You got to support your family of cockroaches. That's perfectly fine. Hey, Tracy, thank you. Oh, thanks. Am I classy? I don't know. I'm not very classy by Kiwi standards, that's for sure. But I try. What do cockroaches eat? Anything they can, really. They go for the good stuff, you know. Bit of foie gras. An awakened sapling. Yeah, I mean, you can chop off bits of plant and graft them back onto other plants and things. So, you know, they're pretty hardy as a life form because they've got that hard cell wall and things, and so they're kind of self-preserved, and they can lie dormant for quite some time. So perhaps there's, you know, particular special types of wood or wood fiber, alchemically produced or treated wood fiber, that's very hard to reproduce. Don't forget, Warforged are not being produced anymore officially. So, and we don't know what the process was of them being produced in the first place. So it could be enormously expensive and very involved. So you might need a staff of thousands of specialist alchemists and mages to actually achieve the process in the first place. The creation forges are definitely major artifacts of some kind, and the workings of those are questionable as well. So we don't know where they're pulling the living force from. Perhaps a particular god was complicit in this entire thing, and maybe there's some motive there as well. Who knows? Hey, happy Thanksgiving in Canada. Hope you guys are enjoying your turkey and things. I got the D20. My Rottweiler's neck is too big, but they have fat chins. I did put it on his harness today. Make a video about that. Made one and posted it on Blink Dog video. Oh, cool. Great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. How do you think the Predator would survive in D&D? Also, same question for Shadow of War, Talion, Corrupted and Non-Corrupted. I don't know what the Shadow of War Talions are. As for the Predator, they would survive just fine. As far as I can tell, they eat an ordinary earth organic tissue. However, they do require specialized atmospheric stuff to breathe. At least earlier versions did, but they are a genetically enhanced species. Hey, thanks, Jared. Growing another silverfish brood in your new home. Yeah, probably not so likely in this place because it's a relatively new building. Like, I was here when this place was built. We tore down the old place. Well, I think we moved the old place off, and we actually designed and built this place ourselves. Well, a company built it for us, but it was our design. So yeah, it's relatively new, and it's surrounded, of course, by nice lush orchards and things. Outside this window here, which you can't see at the moment, is just orange trees. So I have fresh California oranges growing outside my window that I can just reach out and grab one. Pathfinder 2.0 is coming. Yeah, that's true. Pineapple glazed ham. I've actually got some ham in my fridge. Now I have all the mod cons in this place. It's quite nice. Those of you who pay attention to my Facebook will note that I am doing the Inktober challenge at the moment, which means I'm doing an ink drawing, one ink drawing on a theme every single day. The theme today is Star. Yeah, exactly. They would be essentially like a high-level adventuring party because predators are essentially murder hobos, so they'd probably fit in quite well. They could certainly hang out with some trolls or something like that. In fact, there is in lore, the lore of the game, there is a canon example of some trolls which attained high intelligence at one point due to an effect which essentially satisfied their hunger and allowed them to stay in one place, regenerating and growing more intelligent. So that was very interesting. Oh, cool. That's great, Flying X-Blade. What if you go off the plot of the newest movie, The Predator will find someone on the spectrum to take his DNA and inject himself with autism? Well, lucky him. Yeah, that was kind of the plot. Yeah, I have seen that movie. Yeah, well, the idea behind a species engineering itself to be better. Anything that you can do with technology in our world today, you can do with magic and Dungeons and Dragons. So splicing together the DNA of things. I mean, we've got all sorts of half species of things, half dragons and things. And dragons are by no means anywhere like a mammal or something like that. So, you know, they have elemental energy as part of their biology, their metabolism. So they are very different. Yes, smart trolls. That's a scary concept. Did I just spoil the movie to everyone? I didn't, as far as I know. Yeah, I haven't actually revealed anything of the plot of the movie. It involves predators on Earth. So yeah, so I'll be. I had a very good response, obviously, from that Magic the Gathering video. So I will be doing some more lore on that. I'm very interested in just exploring the lore myself. I'm also looking forward to doing some more Ebron videos because I am currently running an Ebron campaign. We're on session number 3, and that's going quite well. It's a pretty outlandish campaign at the moment, though. I'm going to be running a Planescape campaign on the Discord server for a group of friends. And yeah, I'm going to get stuck into those patron videos as well. I want to post some surveys for patrons specifically and have some chats with them, possibly on Discord if possible. I know that they're a fairly passive audience and don't really interact with me a hell of a lot on Patreon. That's their choice entirely. But I would like to get some feedback on exactly what sort of adventures and things like that they want me to produce on there. So yeah, once they get the general idea of what it's about, I'd like it to be a pretty interactive experience. How would I set a challenge rating for an enemy character with classes, features, and feats? The interesting thing is, it's actually in the Dungeon Master's guide, how to set challenge rating and things like that. And the class features, giving character classes to a creature, don't really count much towards its challenge rating, which is very interesting. But there is actually a system for it. What I would recommend is you just mainly look at the armor class, the hit points, the to hit ratios, how much damage it's doing per round. Those are the main deciding factors on how long that combat is going to last. Then you've really got to concern yourself with its mobility and its ability to incapacitate and manipulate the battlefield per se. And then also looking at the main concern with character classes is if they have any spell access, because the moment they start casting spells, it becomes a very, very diverse and wild range of possibilities in combat. And yeah, you'll quickly end up with a monster which is actually far more capable than you are capable of running it in an encounter, unless you planned it all out like a program. So first round it does this, second round it does this, if and then, but, you know, that sort of thing. Which I quite often do. I'll quite often think about, okay, around this point it would cast this spell. Yeah, it'd probably cast this spell then. So I keep it in mind what I think the sequence of events are going to be. Just like running a player character, anything with a character class. But as for challenge ratings, yeah, probably not a huge impact on them mechanically. Are predators lawful evil? Yes, they are. They have a strict code of honor that they follow, and there's obviously factions of them which are following different codes. Dinosaurs were warm-blooded and were reptiles. Dragons aren't off the lizard hook. Well, dinosaurs are not reptiles. Dinosaurs are saurians, so they're somewhat different. So birds once ruled the world. Nice. Yeah, basically. So yeah, dragons are not dinosaurs. And they're not reptiles. They're reptilian in their appearance, but they are draconic as a life form. So they're an entirely different species. They're an entirely different genre of life. They're as different from dinosaurs as mushrooms are from plants. They're very different. There is a beholder NPC in my game that wants to be left alone, eat dragons, and become a vampire. That'd be interesting. Because as far as I know, beholders don't really derive a lot of pleasure from food. So there's other means to immortality, lichdom, for instance. I don't know how a beholder would really deal with the fact that it has a craving for a food type, a type of sustenance, blood, because that would have been entirely a foreign concept to them, and it would definitely drive them insane. AJ, could you please tell me how players become a god? I have no idea. Do they make a deal with the one steal power and artifact steal the power? Please tell me how. Okay, what setting are you playing your game in? Is it a homebrew setting? Are you playing in Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk? Give me some background on where these characters are, because it's different for every setting. If a player in a group becomes a vampire and they're lawful good, would they try to kill the vampire? I mean, still their friend about the same. Yes, they'd try and kill the vampire. Yeah, definitely, because the vampire kills people. It's a curse. It's a supernatural curse that drives them to have a crazy, insatiable, sadistic desire to drain the blood out of living, intelligent beings. They don't derive pleasure out of killing things that aren't the same as them, essentially. So they specifically have a hunger, a desire for the blood of their own species. So that's evil. Can a beholder die of old age? Uncertain. I don't know. There's no game. You're just curious about how one god stone artifact, but how rare is that? Also, if you get enough hillbillies to worship them, would that work? No. How many worshippers they have doesn't actually influence it, as far as I know. So gods are trans-dimensional. They're multi-planar, so they exist in more than one place at the same time, or they have awareness of more than one place at the same time. That's one of the hallmarks of being a god. Otherwise, you're just a very powerful mortal on one plane of existence. There are lesser gods who are restricted to one plane of existence. They generally get, like for instance in Magic the Gathering, when Nicobolus turned up and there was gods of a particular world, just that world, he dominated them and killed them off pretty quickly because he was just a superior being. He is not a god himself, so therefore really neither were they. They were just worshipped as gods by the beings who lived there. So they weren't gods per se. You could even say in the Greek mythology, the gods were just like that as well, just very, very powerful individuals that were worshipped by people, but they weren't trans-dimensional. They didn't exist in multiple planes of existence at the same time. So the ability to exist on multiple planes of existence at the same time or be linked across them is the hallmark of the gods that is usually bestowed by an overgod or a greater entity. So in the case of Forgotten Realms, that's Ao. You can't become a trans-dimensional entity without Ao's say-so, because essentially he's sitting over top of all the dimensions going, nah, yep, nah. So if Ao doesn't want you traveling between different dimensions, or doesn't want you to see between different dimensions, doesn't want you to use divination or anything like that, he says no. That's it. So yeah, you can have all the prerequisites of transitioning and becoming a god, but without the say-so of greater gods or beings that control the portfolios, it's not going to happen. Vegan vampires. Hunger, not sadism. Yeah. Look, don't forget that there's modern concepts of the vampire, which you get on TV and things like that, and then there's the old school Dungeons and Dragons concept of a vampire. And the concept of a vampire in Dungeons and Dragons is very different. Like, for instance, zombies in Dungeons and Dragons don't hunt brains. They don't have a craving for brains. They just want to kill things. They don't need to eat bits of you. But on the other hand, vampires have a sadistic, overriding, crazy hunger for blood that is never satisfied. So the moment they're standing next to a living entity, all they think about is blood, 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 blood. That's it. That's all they do. Yeah, essentially that's what he is. I mean, you could say that about any authority figure. He's there to keep the balance. And also Tharizdun, Tharizdun set up barriers that, like, Tharizdun originally was one of the major gods of the Dungeons and Dragons universe as far as Forgotten Realms was concerned, and he didn't want mortal creatures to have any access at all, even being able to see the astral realm and the domains of the gods that existed within them, because he essentially assumed correctly that if the mortals could sense and detect and know about these places, they would think that there was some way to get there to become gods. And it's true, that's exactly what happened. If Tharizdun wasn't driven insane and taken out of the picture in the first place, perhaps the Dungeons and Dragons universe would never have mortals ascend to godhood, ever. But many have. Does a blood-starved vampire become a lich? No, it just stays a vampire. It just becomes weakened and crazy. So you could argue that one of the ways to become a god is to essentially blackmail your way in there. So get so powerful that you're able to kill off the entire population of an entire country or even world. So if you can kill an entire world of worshippers, then you're probably going to get a portfolio as some sort of evil god. Because essentially the other gods will go, hey man, If he doesn't, if we don't give him godhood, he's going to kill all of our worshippers, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's a good candidate for godhood. So, you know, strong arm your way in there with blackmail and yeah, coercion, threats. In an older edition of D&D, they stated that God's power was determined by how many followers it has. Yes, to a certain extent. So you've got the portfolios. Let's say we've got a portfolio of the sea, and any god that's involved in any aspect of worship or control of reality that involves the sea is beholden somewhat to that major portfolio of the sea. So let's say you've got a major god like Poseidon. He's a major god. And he's aware of the entire sea, all of the seas, and any realms that he's currently existing in. And all you need to do is say his name, and he will be present in that realm, aware of everything that's going on within 6 miles or so, anytime his name is spoken anywhere. So he's a true transdimensional being. And then you've got a local god of that particular world who is a god of fishing in particular. Now, fishing has got to do with the portfolio of the sea. So a little bit of his worship, the worship going towards that god of fishing, he then feeds it up the chain to Poseidon, or one of the other major gods of the domain of fishing, and they take some of that soul power from the worship and they feed it back to him and give him the ability to change reality, and more fish appear on demand. So all the people worshipping and wishing for more fish are essentially changing the reality, but through the proxy of a god. That's essentially what it's all about. So the power of the soul is the ability to manipulate reality. And that's why it's valued by gods, and that's why it's valued by demons. Because demons don't have worshippers usually. Oh, sorry, not demons, devils. So yeah, there you go. So it still exists in Forgotten Realms. It's just a system on top of that as well. Yes, Asmodeus is completely aware of what Grass wants. He's been manipulating those guys for a very long time. Oh, the strongest vampire I've ever ran. So this was in Palladium games. It wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. Don't forget, I've played all sorts of different role-playing games, and Palladium has a very interesting way of dealing with vampires in that it's an alien intelligence. So essentially it's a great old one, kind of like an amorphous mass with tentacles with mouths and eyes on it, that just hungers after living life force and control, and it produces vampires to essentially do exactly that, feed power back to it. So they call it a vampire intelligence. And I like that idea. I like the idea that Strahd is actually beholden to some other unearthly creature, some horrible alien thing that's actually the cause of the curse in the first place. And you kill that and all the other vampires die. How to become a god in D&D. PayPal your DM $10,000. Number 2. Enjoy being a god. Yeah, that'll work. What is best in life? Fishing. If the worshippers of state had God drop dramatically, is it possible to fall to the lowest rank possible for the pantheon? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Gods who lose all of their followers become revenants, essentially. So they fade to just being the original entity, an astral entity, a potential. So just wafting around, and there's many of them. The hollows from Bleach, yep. So essentially they are possessing entities. They're the ghosts. The interesting thing about the hollows is that they're invisible to non-supernatural creatures. I would say there's a precedent in D&D where some things are invisible to all planar creatures, so all creatures native to that plane cannot see the thing, but anything not native to that plane can see it. So that's a form of invisibility which I think you could get quite a lot of use out of in D&D, and it's very easy to remember. Are you from that plane of existence? Then you can't see it. Are you from another plane of existence? Yes, you can. This would include somebody who is stepping into the border ethereal and looking into reality, and then they'd be able to see the invisible things, and vice versa. So you could do something like that for the invisibility of the hollows and and those who have to transform into the swordsmen or the Quincy's. What do they call the other guys? Reapers? I don't know. Yeah. And as for the hollows themselves, they are a ghost with additional properties put onto it. So you'd exchange various things and increase its challenge rating depending on how big and terrifying this thing is. But really, they don't have a lot of powers, those ghosts. They just, they sort of savage things and make illusions and toss cars and things like that. But there was a lot more to them in the actual cartoon, as far as I know. I just watched the live action one recently on Netflix. Axe poison! How's it going, Trey? Yeah, don't forget to smash the like button. All 55 of you. Smash it hard. There's all sorts of origins to vampires in all sorts of different mediums. As for Dungeons and Dragons, you would have to say it's, say, Orcus or something like that. One of the demon lords of death would produce them, because they are a plague on the living. They are there to sow destruction, essentially. So that seems very demonic to me. Devils are a bit more organised and structural. So they're interested in keeping order in the universe. Vampires don't strike me as something which is an orderly being. Really, its net negative effect will just leave a pile of corpses wherever it is, and increasing fear and paranoia and that sort of thing. How would you go about introducing a new D&D creature like the Skull Crawler or the Relic Beast? I'm not familiar with those ones. Honestly, I wasn't planning on live streaming this long at all, but since it's working, that's fine. Same with anything, really. You seize on a particular bit of the existing lore and then tweak it a bit, and then basically insert your monster where it fits best. Because every single time you start playing D&D, even if you're using a published adventure or existing D&D lore, as soon as it hits the table, it's yours. It's non-canonical. It's your own world. It's your own setting. It's your own game, and it's your sandbox. You can change anything you want, and you can insert any monsters anywhere you want, however you feel fit. So, yeah, just do it. A Lovecraftian short story. Oh, good. Thanks, Jared. Probably not the best place to post walls of text about vampire clans, Kedron. There's an entire role-playing game dedicated to vampire clans. You may have heard of it. I'd see nothing wrong with that in Dungeons and Dragons, though, but vampires are, not so organised and civilised in Dungeons and Dragons. They're more, supernatural predators. What's my opinion on a vampire PC? Not a full-blooded, like a full-on vampire, because it's impossible to think like a vampire. So you can't really role-play one effectively unless the entire game is orientated around you being a vampire. I have seen that, though. There was a good friend of mine, Dungeon Master Wes, who had a system for blood points and things like that, so the characters could use blood as a resource, a trackable resource like healing potions and things like that, and they would spend them like sorcery points to increase their vampiric powers. So that sort of system works fairly well. But again, it's very disruptive to player characters because vampires are supernatural creatures with supernatural powers, and they are very OP compared to ordinary player characters. So it's not really fair to have somebody become a vampire, because the next thing you get is players at the table saying, well, I'm going to infect my character with vampirism, and I'm going to have a vampire character as well. No living thing in its right mind would willingly become a vampire, because you die. Your soul goes away and you become a supernatural creature. You're not there anymore. You're dead. You're just, a corpse inhabited by an evil being. So, yeah. Those who, would be around a vampire would know that this is not a living thing anymore. This is not a human. This is not the same person. The personality is completely changed. The memories may be there possibly, but it's just some evil entity which is drawing on the meat's information in the brain case. It's not the same entity. Thanks, Michael. Were creatures, yeah, you can roleplay were creatures. Something like a were rat or were boar or were bear. Those are a bit more onto it. Were cats, were tigers are a bit more predatory. Don't really conform to things. And werewolves, forget about it. Werewolves are savage berserkers who'll just kill things. Hey, it's perfectly fine for you to just disagree with me all you like. Again, I'm mainly talking from my own personal perspective on how I would run vampires as traditional D&D monsters. If you wanted to incorporate them as the more modern version of vampires, that's perfectly fine. It's your table, your rules. Most of these, there's like, if you're asking me if you're asking me the legit D&D answer, if I'm like drawing from text like Van Richen's guide and things like that, there's occasionally things like vampires, which are or wampers, which are half vampire sort of things that they've introduced as player characters in the past. Or you could look at like savage species and do the level adjustment for actually having a vampire character, things like that. So there are ways and means of doing it. But if you're asking me what the in-law sort of the in-game lore of role-playing a Dungeons and Dragons vampire, yeah, you're not the shiny skinned, yeah, they're monsters. Werebats, wereswans, a werehuman. Werehumans exist. The weresloth transforms and naps. He naps, then he attacks. Yeah, vampires are monsters, full stop. That's true. Player characters are monsters too, from a certain point of view. No Twilight vampires, yep. The Dhampir, yeah, that's them. There's all sorts of varieties of that, because people are like, player characters are fascinated with the idea of role-playing a vampire, and I see nothing wrong with wanting to role-play anything. For sure. At your table, roleplay what you like. Absolutely. Or find a different role-playing game which suits that style of play. There is an entire game which is dedicated to playing a vampire. It's a very popular game. It's been around for a very long time. A lot of people play it. The system is pretty easy to understand. You can pick it up in half a day. Not a narcoleptic, just a run-of-the-mill weresloth. True. Vampires are not your friends, that's true. Right, there is a role-playing game, Sam, called Toon, which I played a while ago, where essentially you are playing in a Saturday morning cartoon. Nobody dies, they just sit down and shut up for 5 minutes and don't do anything, and then later on in the cartoon they appear in another scene. It's like, during this bit Wile E. Coyote straps the bomb to his back and he blows up and he's off camera for a little while. And then later on, he reappears again with another Acme box. He's going to try out another harebrained scheme to get your character, which is the Roadrunner. So, yeah, it's completely madcap. And I think Mutants and Masterminds drew a little bit of that as well. What's his name? Steve Kenson, the designer for Mutants and Masterminds for Paizo. He kind of seems obsessed with the idea of a comic book hero just getting like knocked out, getting the wind stuff knocked out of them, and then being out of action for a little while, but they never actually die. So yeah, there's that. I personally hate those sort of games. I'd much rather have the real consequences, possibility of death. So I prefer Palladium in that regard. If I'm playing Mutants and Masterminds, I always modify it at the table so that death is actually possible. Do devils and demons age? They do not. No, they are immortals. Demons are actually corrupted elementals, and devils are corrupted celestials, so they don't age. Player death is not hard in 5th edition. It's really not. Essentially, here's the thing to remember as a dungeon master if you want to kill your characters. Hit them, when they go down, hit them again. Matthew Colville has got a very famous t-shirt which says, "The Earth Elemental steps on your head to make sure you are dead." That's how it goes. All you got to do is keep on damaging them when they're at 0, and they very quickly die, because every single time they take any amount of damage, that's an automatic failed death saving throw, and they only have 3. What was that, Nicholas? Oh no, I don't need any music stuff. I've got access to Epidemic Sound, and there's also a YouTube channel and a Patreon guy that produces music for me as well, and also Bryce, who's on here somewhere. Bryce has produced music for me as well on the video on Centaurs. He did the guitar music that everybody can hear. So yeah, I'm good for music. As for the artwork, essentially I'm covered by the open gaming license that Dungeons & Dragons has, and also whenever an artist asks me about my inclusion of their work, it's always very, very positive. And as you've probably seen in various videos or in the comment section, I always promote them whenever they show up and say, hey, what do you think about what would happen if John Cena, Batman, and Superman, and Donald and a Terminator, then they will become gods? No idea what you're talking about, Danny. Barrowborn, that's a very good question. How many types of in-game attainable immortality can you name off the top of your head? The clone spell, Lichdom, wishes, reincarnation, basically perpetually raising yourself from the dead, because you can be dead for any amount of years, and while you're dead you still exist in the afterlife, so you can keep coming back to the mortal world. Let's see, what other sort of things? You could be transferred into a prison, the prison spell. Because as far as I know, I don't know if you die of old age when you're in the prison spell. Soul jar, that sort of thing. Clone isn't immortality. Well, it is if you transfer your consciousness into them. A high-level monk, yes. High-level monks essentially stop aging. High-level druids, if you're an elf and you're a high-level druid, you can live for 7,000 years, naturally. Oh, well, the original you would still die. The original you would die, but the clone would live. I think. Unless they've changed the clone spell. Flesh to stone. Yep, that's true. Trevor. That's not nice. Oh yeah, vampirism. Well, technically you're dead as a vampire. Is there a poison that affects high level undead? Yes, axe poison. Also, liquid light. And of course, holy water. Can mystics become immortal? I suppose they could. If you're a... no, Tracy, you don't have to respect his thoughts. It's clearly wrong. If you are a druid, for instance, that could wild shape into a beast, and the creature that you wild shape into is immortal, then I suppose you could. You just have to find a creature which is immortal. There is a type of jellyfish which is immortal, and it's certainly within the low CR that a druid could attain as a wild shape. So yeah, you could actually wild shape into an immortal jellyfish. Which Batman are you talking about, Trevor? Any suggestions for a rogue going up against a massive Leviathan? I would say write out a Last Will and Testament and pack light. Bodakism. Not really. A Bodak essentially has the soul scared out of them. They're in a constant state of psychotic terror. It is literally psychosis. Yeah, no sensory organs, no brain. Sounds blissful. Just floating. That's all you experience. Float. If you die as the immortal jellyfish, poofs you back into druid form. Yeah. And you'd be like, how long have I been a jellyfish? And everybody'd be like, who are you? 20,000 years. Do I consider souls to be currency to gods and higher powers in Dungeons and Dragons? Yes, they are. See, from the perspective of entities that don't have souls willing to go to them, then they are a currency. They're a valued thing. To gods and things that have souls willingly going towards them, they are using the power of the souls, but they're also passing the souls up into their ultimate form. So they're helping the souls to progress for some purpose that we're not privy to. Because there's an exit out the top of Mount Celestia that goes on to other multiverses with entirely different gods. Yeah, souls are Bitcoin. Alrighty, everybody. We're getting up to an hour and it's time for me to go. Also, I have a very dusty, runny nose at the moment. It's driving me crazy. I need to go and blow it. So, successful live stream. We're back in action and running, up and running, and I'll be able to carry these on at the usual time. Thank you very much, everybody that tuned in. Thank you very much for the super chats. Much appreciated. Don't forget, if you have any questions, and I've reached my hour limit, a super chat will extend the time of my live stream somewhat as I answer your questions. but it's not mandatory. Hey, Carlos. So I'll catch you all later. Thanks for tuning in. Hope I managed to answer some questions. Sorry for those of you whose questions I missed. Happy gaming. I'll see you soon.